Welcome everyone to the EA Global Summit 2022. This is Vaibhavi from the EA Global Summit organizing team. Firstly, I would like to start by thanking all of you for your interest in joining us for this session. This session is conducted by Ian Mitchell from Ability Engineering. Ian has been a Sparx partner, EA teacher, and consultant for nearly 20 years and writes the best-selling EA extensions. Ian will be sharing his expertise on solution architecture using Enterprise Architect. We will be muting all the participants throughout the session. For any queries during and after the session, we request you to use the chat window to drop your questions to the speaker. We will be reading out some of the questions and the speaker will answer them during the Q&A session at the end. To enable collaboration and communication with Ian and other EA practitioners directly after the session, we request you to visit the dedicated channel for this session in Microsoft Teams. Ian and several other speakers have kindly accepted to stay in the channel to have a one-to-one discussion and answer your queries. The link to the MS Teams channel is posted in the chat window for your quick reference. In case of any difficulty in connecting to Teams, please reach us in the chat window or write to us at registrations@eaglobalsummit.com. Thanks once again for your interest and support to EA Global Summit 2022. We look forward to a wonderful session with Ian. Over to you, Ian.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everybody. It's a slightly gloomy, rather dark morning here in the Welsh Mountains, but we'll try and get rid of the gloom if we can. So this session is about solution architecture, and it's where I've spent probably most of my time using Enterprise Architect, is trying to make it work in that environment where, and I'll explain what I mean by solution architecture because I think it's not obvious. Solution architecture to me is where I have a large body of information, a large body of knowledge, and I've got a large number of projects, picking out a little bit of that knowledge, trying to change it, thinking about changing it, maybe deciding in the end not to change it, and when they've made their change, putting it back in again. So the body of knowledge gradually grows as the number of projects rolls forward over time. And I think it has some pretty interesting consequences for EA users. So let's carry on and have a look. I talked about some of this yesterday, and I won't do the build and stuff, which is if you're doing a solution architecture, I think you're in two camps, one of two camps. You're either a centralized repository or you're a distributed repository, which means, sorry, more than one repository. So a distributed team or a centralized team. Just a minute, my camera seems to have disappeared for reasons best known to itself. There we go, I'm back. So you either, because otherwise you don't see me waving my arms around, which spoils the fun. So to me, you're either distributed or you're centralized. You've either got one repository or you've got more than one, and there isn't really any kind of intermediate state. So the example I'm going to be talking about is solution architecture where you've got a single repository. If you've got multiple repositories, then you should be talking to the Lever Lemon Tree people, because they're the people that do that solution fantastically. Yes, where you've got multiple repositories and each team has their own repository. Sure, down the bottom of the slide, there are some other bits and pieces of EA solutions. They don't really work, although the RAS solution over here, I know Phil Chudley is going to talk about later on today, so that's worth listening to Phil to find out more about that. But I don't really think that anybody would say that RAS was a solution to multiple repositories distributed all over the place. So it's really going to be Lemon Tree. If you're in the single repository world, well, yeah, there was a time-aware modeling solution that's built into Sparx, which, okay, a portfolio manager, which is what I'm mostly going to talk about, builds on top of that and adds another probably 20 times the function. So time-aware modeling is fine as far as it goes, but it just doesn't go very far. So what's interesting and different about solution architecture? It's really just the sheer number of projects. So I've worked in organizations where there are 50, 60, 70 projects all running at the same time, some in the very early stages, just starting to think, some busy doing their detailed design, some ready to implement. But they're smeared out over time, so the start times are all different, the end times are all different, sometimes the end times are very far in the future. But they're all making changes which are small compared to the size of the baseline. So if I have 1,000 processors in my organization, it would be unusual to have change projects changing more than 10 or 20 of them. So quite a small proportion, but changing 10 or 20, important business processes is still a big business change. So worth thinking about. So it's important that whatever solution we think about takes account of that. It takes account of the fact that some projects are still in the thinking stage and they haven't firmed up their plan yet. They're still at the exploring options stage, and only in maybe a few weeks or a few months' time, they might say, right, now this is our firm intention. And having done that, that intention needs to be communicated to other people, to all the other projects, because that's what's hard about solution architecture. It's not the individual change projects, although they could be hard. It's making sure that my project and your project and your project and your project don't fall over each other. And I think those of you who've worked in this world before will know that feeling of you get right into final testing and then somebody says, well, you can't change that because somebody deleted it last week. That server's gone. That process has already changed in a different way, so your change isn't compatible. And that's what's hard about doing solution architecture. It's that sheer number of people and all these little changes that overlap with each other in very annoying kind of ways. So I think if we're thinking about a solution to solution architecture, too many solutions, then these are the kinds of things that our technical solution needs to address. The main thing is to understand the impacts of projects on each other. So here's why I think the traditional code style of branching and merging doesn't work. Because by the time I decide to merge my change into some kind of bigger world, it's too late. I've already gone out to my stakeholders and we've worked out what our solution is going to be, and this is what we think we're going to do. I then try and merge it into the baseline. It says, oh, no, you can't. Something else has happened. That's no use. I want to know right now, I'm thinking about doing this. What's the impact? Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you, because that's happening. Fantastic. I also need to be able to add together all of my change projects and create some kind of a roadmap. So a roadmap for an individual process, for a software system, for a whole set of systems, to be able to say what's going to happen over a period of time. And this is where I think also is a difference between a multi-repository approach, where in the solution architecture world, strangely, there is no to-be architecture. There's an as-is, there's what's in the world right now, but the to-be is the to-be at the end of this week, at the beginning of next week, at the beginning of the week after, month after, next quarter, next year. So the to-be isn't a place in time, it's a rolling set of changes. So we sometimes call these continuous change projects, where looking across my whole suite of projects, the business is just changing all the time. It's not a step change. And I think maybe that's a difference. The Believer guys might disagree with me, but I think the lemon tree solution is looking at kind of step changes rather more than ours is looking at little tiny ones all the time. Okay, and we need to take account of the project life cycle as well, where projects think for a while, then maybe just stop. They think for a while and then decide they're going to do something. So we need to think about all those sort of things. So, that's the summary. You don't want to see the summary, you want to see the reality. So I don't often do this, by the way, so you're highly honored that I actually use Enterprise Architect for doing a presentation. So here's my model. It's a single view of everything, and I've chopped it up into, I think, a sensible number of bits. So I have my baseline area. I better log in as the right user, so I'm logged in as admin. So just a minute, I will open I've got a crib sheet in here of what I need to show you, because otherwise I just forget, because I'm getting old. So I'll log in as a not a random user, a carefully chosen user, called rather enigmatically G1, because, everything now seems to be locked to me. So I'm just a random solution architect, solution designer on an individual project. So reassuringly, the baseline is locked to me. So here's my architecture baseline and my components and my use cases and my business stuff and Ractors and all that Archimate great stuff, all locked. I can't change that stuff. So good. This is just standard EA security, by the way, nothing clever here. So here's the area where I keep all of my projects, and we've split them here into portfolios, so groups of projects. This is how, if you do have this sort of 50, 100 project kind of world, they're almost certainly grouped together. You may call them programs, you may call them something else. We've just called them portfolios. And within a portfolio, I have a number of projects. So this is my project. As you can see, it's the only one that's unlocked to me. So finally, I've got down to where I'm going to be doing my work. So we're going to look at now and take you through this portfolio manager solution, trying to address some of these key problems of solution architecture. So how can I look at impacts of projects? How can I get the big view, the small view? How can I understand how projects relate to each other? So I'll take you through a bunch of these. And as I do that, I'm going to skip between different projects rather than trying to follow one all the way through. Because remember, at any moment in time, different projects are at different stages. So this first project is right at its very beginning. The next project I'll look at is a bit further along. The next one is a bit further along. I'm not going to try and show you absolutely everything because we'll be here all night or all morning. So let's look at this project then. So I've got a nice little diagram in here with nothing in it because I haven't really started yet. I'm just thinking, right, I'm the solution architect for this project. I better build a solution from somewhere. So I've remembered here that there's actually a link. Thank you, yes. Link to somewhere in the baseline. So I'm going to take some objects, some elements from the baseline, which remember I can see these guys, but the red line around it says I can't edit those. That's fine, because this is me looking at the baseline. So I'm feeling a bit lazy, so I'm going to take the whole lot and I'm going to copy them, and then I'm going to put them back into my area as links at the moment, not as new. Very important difference. So paste them as links. So here they all are. But of course, there's nothing new in my area because this is my diagram and I've put a copy of something from the baseline. So nothing surprising here. So let's see what happens if I think I want to make a copy of one of these with a view to changing it. And we use the terminology of branches here because, I don't know, copy, I don't know, we could call it a copy, we've called it a branch. So let's take a bit of the baseline here and say, I think I might want to change technology service D. So I can't change it in the baseline because it's locked. So I have to take a copy, a branch of it, a copy, and change that. So I'll do a right click, specialize, portfolio manager, create a branch. And there's a bit of messing about. Oh, that wasn't very exciting. Well, it was because it's taken that technology service D and it's copied it. And we've made it's got a little asterisk, if you can see that at the end, just mainly to remind me that it's not the original. And it's colored it a different color. That's why we have this element status legend up here, really, really useful. It shows me what the statuses are of all of these elements. And most of them here, I've got a black border, so they're implemented. So they're from the baseline. So things in the baseline are implemented. I should probably maybe go back and look at the state model for that I'm working to now, because that's probably interesting. So elements start off with it as implemented. That's what things are when they're in the baseline. So what we just did was we made a new element here. So it's got a new swim lane and it's a branch and it's connected back to the original. What I can then do is, if I want to create new ones, we create them with a status of proposed. The only reason for choosing that is it's the EA default, so it's just easier to do it that way. I can then choose later in my project to say, I'm moving from a just kind of thinking, messing around, sketching kind of stage to a status of planned. And planned in this portfolio manager solution architecture world has a very specific meaning. It means I've got to a milestone in my project where the change that I'm thinking about is probably going to happen. It's not certain because things could happen later in the project that I can't predict. But most project delivery processes have that kind of key milestone in the middle somewhere where I've maybe done my high-level design, I've got it signed off, I've got the money, I've got the resources, my project's a go. It may fail later, but it's probably going to go. So this is what this stage means, where I take anything that I've either branched from elsewhere or new stuff and say, no, I'm going to make this planned. So other people looking at this can say, yeah, I can probably plan on that change happening. So I could, in turn, take a branch off of this because my change is going to happen in 3 months' time. If your project's going to happen in 6 months' time, it's fair that you should build on top of what I've done. So that's all good. And finally, when I actually implement my change, so my process goes live, my software system is deployed, we go back to being implemented. And at this point, we actually replace the original that I branched way back here, and I replace it with the new one. So interestingly, in Portfolio Manager world, there is no merge. It's a replace. And because the copies up here are very deep copies with all the connectors, we're safe to do a replace. So there is no merge step. And at the moment, we just archive off that old one and stick it somewhere and disconnect it from everybody. There's also a little kind of bit of the state model where we talk about deleting things, or in our terms, retiring them. I'm about to retire, I hope, but I don't want to be deleted. So you can take a branch with the intention of deleting something, because that's really useful knowledge. Because if somebody else says, ooh, there's a project over there thinking about removing that business process completely, I better not branch it myself. We'll see the consequences in a minute. And eventually you might then say, yeah, it's my now firm intention to retire this element. And when it's finally implemented, we archive it. So that's just a bit of a side loop into the state model. So hopefully you get what our state model is. Other more complex ones are available. I saw Jacek from Poland had a really interesting one, which was way more complicated than that. So he's obviously thought of some use cases that I haven't. So back in my project, back in my solution architecture, all I did was I created a branch from something in the baseline. Oh, by the way, if you're very untrusting, you can see what I've done. I know you're all EA people, so we can show you the behind the scenes. So we can do an insert related elements and show you what Portfolio Manager has built under the covers. So there's the original one from my baseline. It's got a link with a nice obvious name on it. I don't know why Sparx gave it a very obscure name when they did time-aware modeling. It's got a big thing and it's colored in red and it says branch on it. I've also, so that's the old connector between, or sorry, the baseline connector between these two. I've got a copy of it and we color it in blue to that. And we give it some tags to say, I know what source connector I was and I have a status. So those are special tags that we add on to that connector that says, this isn't a real connector yet, this is just me thinking about it. Yeah, it's only a proposed link, so we'll get rid of that guy. So that's all very interesting. Obviously, nothing else is happening with that particular technology service. So let's see what happens if I get lazy and say, let's just branch everything. I don't know which bits I'm going to change. I'll take the whole lot, branch everything. So we'll go to Portfolio Manager and create a branch. So now it's got a lot more thinking to do. It's going to go and look at every other project that there's around, everything that I'm branching, and find out if anybody else is doing anything interesting. So here's where Portfolio Manager really starts to get interesting, because real time, and this is all running on just a local machine, but it's a pretty quick and a bit of analysis. It's telling me for all these elements here that I was thinking about changing, I'm just branching them at this stage. There's no commitment to doing anything. And obviously these are all implemented at the moment. What's the impact of me doing that? You can see these impacts are kind of color coded. Good suggestion from somebody the other day was to not do red, amber, green if you're a bloke and you're a red, green colorblind. So they're shades of blue. So some of them are fine. Like the technology service I just branched, that's perfectly okay. It says it's okay. Nobody else is touching it. Whereas this one here says, project B1, I didn't give very ambitious names to some of these projects, lacking in imagination. But project B1, which is Fred, they're also branched it as well. So what does this mean? This isn't just some kind of techie thing from EA. This is an important piece of information. This says project B1 here, which has branched that one and this one, they're thinking in the same kind of area as me. So it's probably a good plan at this point, and it's why we put Fred's contact details in here to say, maybe me and Fred need to have a cup of coffee and find out why he's thinking about changing the same part of the baseline as me. Because one phone call now might save us millions later on in the project, because we're both thinking in the same area. Maybe he's just lazy like me and said, oh, I'll just copy a whole load of stuff and I don't really care. Maybe he's going, no, I'm serious. I think those the technology services there are what my solution needs. And oh, so does mine. So it may be the case, even just from this really simple analysis, that we merge the projects together, that we talk to each other and say, actually, the changes you're making, Fred, and my changes, they're quite separate, really, even though we're changing the same stuff. So they're perfectly compatible. So that's cool. So those are just a first indication. And remember, this is very, very early in my project. I've just first started this morning creating my solution architecture, and already I'm being alerted to what other people are doing. Nowhere near merging and implementing anything. But I've got some more warnings on here. So here there's, oh, it's Fred again. He's planning to delete, to retire that technology service there. So, oh, blimey. So he really is working in the same area as me. So we do need to talk. But there's some even worse impacts here as well. The worst one is that one. So software system C here, project B2, which is Charlie, she's got a firm plan now, not just thinking about it, she has a firm committed plan to delete software system C. So probably my solution shouldn't contain that. So I might want to go back and revisit this and say, actually, yeah, okay, I'll avoid software system C, because by the time I implement, it probably won't even be there. Yeah, so I find out about that right now, not in 3 months' time. And there's a few more too. The last one down here. So project BB2 with Jane, for this application component, what does it say? It says the newer version is planned. So she's already said, we've gone through our main milestone. I've got a change that's already been agreed to application component A. And so really, I should not branch the old version. Here's where we get to a decision I had to make in producing Portfolio Manager, which is, do I enforce the rules or do I just advise people? So I'm in a kind of a friendly helper kind of mode here of saying, I wouldn't branch that old version if I were you. If the better solution is to say, why not get the latest planned version? So go and get that version that Jane's already planning to change, so her future version, and I should branch off of that one, not branch off the one further back, because branching off an old version, there may be a good reason. I can't honestly think what it is. Maybe if I knew that my project was going to implement before Jane's, maybe that might be a good idea, in which case I need to tell her. But easier just to say, replace with the newest version. Well, that's fine. So that's her new version of that component, which has a status of planned. Obviously, that's what Jane's planning to do. And there are no impacts to that. Nobody else is also branching from her planned version. So this is me then saying, right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not, I think, going to do anything with software system, that software system there, and that one here. Okay, I won't bother doing that one either. So now go and branch me everything else. Get a lot of these in from different versions of EA. So this is me doing a lot of the connecting and reconnecting and stuff. So you can see these software systems B and software system and technology service B are the baseline versions. They're just there because I put them in my diagram. Everything else I've got a copy of, a deep copy of. And so here they all are in my baseline, in my project area. So these are my personal copies. So I can now go and make changes to those. So that's the first sort of stage. That's what branching looks like. So I warn you about what's going on. Just keeping an eye on the time so we don't totally run out of time. So now let's look at a project that's a bit further on in its life. So we'll go and look at this guy over here. So I better log in as that user, otherwise I won't be able to do anything interesting. So I'll log in as that user, not big on passwords. So this project's got a bit further on down its track. So it's here it is. It looks like it's mainly a process change, this project. So here's some stuff from the baseline, because I know that because it says it's implemented ones. There's some green ones, which are branches. So these are changes. You can tell which ones are branches because I've by default put an asterisk after them. And the deep structure is also copied, by the way. So if you look at some of these guys, if they have an internal structure, then we branch those as well. So it goes all the way down, plus all of their connectors. So branching can be quite a big deal. And I've got some more proposed stuff. So this is all new stuff here. So now let's look at the impact of, if I've got to the end of my key milestone, I've done my high-level design. Maybe this is what my high-level design looks like. And it's a go. We've got the funding, stakeholders have signed it off. Let's go. So we're going to move into this planned status with everything. So I'm going to choose to go planned on everything. So we'll say portfolio manager. Got to do it at a project level. I remember. Specialized portfolio manager. I'm going to promote the project. Yeah, so I'm promoting it from thinking about it to a planned status. A lot more analysis to do now. So here's all the bits and pieces I'm going to implement. At this point, by the way, we can start attaching dates to when things happen. It's fair to say in Portfolio Manager at the moment, I haven't gone very big on dates, but I think we could do a lot more with them. A lot more data arithmetic of this is happening before that's happening and stuff like that. So you'll see at the end, hopefully we'll have time to do that bit of where we can use dates. But at the moment, it's the impact analysis that I'm going to care about. So the impact analysis is going to go and say, if you were going to do what you're planning on doing, so if you were going to go and say, this is my firm plan, before you do that, let's just think what's happening elsewhere. So hopefully, if my branching was sensible, because when I did my branches, weeks and weeks ago, I was careful and I've been looking at doing my impact analysis as I've been going along, which you can do, by the way, at any point in your project. So here's all the stuff that I'm thinking of making into a planned state. And there's only a couple of things. Now they've branched that process as well, and they've branched that business event as well. So at the moment, we have two parallel branches. In the portfolio manager world, that's perfectly okay, so long as you know. And of course, it's all in EA, it's all in a single model, so we know. So it might be polite at this point to go back and talk to Raj and say, by the way, I've just gone to a planned state with these two bits that are a part of your solution. So you might want to branch off of my new versions of these. He will also see next time he does an impact analysis that his stuff is now out of date. Again, we don't kind of smack him on the head and say, you must do this, but we just give him a polite warning. So that's doing the impact analysis at that point. I won't. Well, let's go ahead and promote these guys. Not very exciting. It's just moving stuff around. So they obviously, look, they've all disappeared from my project area now, and they've gone somewhere else, and they've changed to being purple rather than anything else. So where have they gone? So I better go find these guys, and they've gone into a staging area. The staging area here is an area that's locked, but available to me. But it's what I would expect to happen now, and this depends on how you want to run your project. I would expect now somebody from the baseline team to take these guys out of here, all these events that I've just put in, and put them into not the baseline area, but another area that's locked to everybody else. Because what I don't want to have happen now is somebody else go and make a change here, but worse still, me go and make a change. because I've committed now to say, these are the changes that I'm going to make to these objects and processes. If I go and change this, that has impacts on other projects potentially. So I need to have a change process that says, hey, look, I know I said this is what the process was going to look like, but I've changed my mind after that committed milestone. So I need to think pretty carefully about that. I need to take a branch. I need to make a change. I need to explore the impact, make my change, put it back. So it's not just, oh, it's all my stuff. I can go and do whatever I like. So we're employing a bit of discipline here. And if you're going to work in this solution architecture world, in this multi-project world, you do need a bit of discipline, a bit of, right, I'll do it this way, but not that way, and think about everybody else and be a good citizen as you're doing stuff. The implementation bit then that we could look at is the least interesting. When I actually go live with it, I just lift it and shift it, so not terribly interesting. Excuse me a moment, I'm just going to go back to my little demo crib sheet here so I don't forget what to do. So we've looked at a project then at the branching stage. We've looked at it at the point where it commits. I haven't bothered you with the implementation bit because it's the least interesting. But I'll show you my little crib sheet here. So there's no secrets here, just a reminder of things to look at. So we've got all of our projects all in the same model. They're all playing nicely with each other. They're all branching and then going to plan and then implementing, and everybody points to everybody else. So there's no kind of secret configuration files here. It's all just done with EA elements and connectors. So you can lift and shift this stuff. You can XMI it out. You can share it. You can use Collaborate with it. You can use PCS, WebEA. All those things will all still work because it's just connectors and elements. So, but we get some really interesting side effects that you're going to enjoy, I think. So let's look at, for example, at this business process here. And I better go and be an admin for a minute because a lot of this stuff isn't appropriate to an individual project. So I'll go back to being admin again for a second. Otherwise. So let's look at what's going to happen to this individual project, this individual business process, rather eccentrically named multiple planned changes. So that's why I remember which one it is. So I can now real time go and look at an individual element and say, tell me all the branching, planning, all that stuff that's happening to this individual element. So let's have a look at this guy then. So portfolio manager, create me a roadmap. And this is done real time. You're just going to have to take my word for the fact that it was done real time. It was. So you see, it's quite quick because we don't have to do massive database searches and stuff. I just go to the element and say, oh, what are all the interesting, started with this guy, what are you replaced by? What do you become? What are you replaced by? So actually it's a few fairly small queries. And this is an auto laid out diagram. And in a future version, I'm going to make sure that this does an auto update whenever it's loaded. So you can guarantee you're always looking at the latest version. So this diagram is telling me a lot. It's saying, so here's the thing I started with. This is the thing I'm interested in. It's a business process. It's going to be replaced by that one, which I've called version 2, rather enigmatically. And it's being done by this project here. That's a project. I've taken the Archimate work package kind of coloring for this kind of thing. And somebody over here from that project, somebody else has taken a branch of that, but strangely, it's got a version 3 as well. So, I might want to think about that a bit more because they've taken a branch of an old version, whereas there's a new version 3 out there that somebody else is planning later in time. D2 project is doing that, and this person here has taken a branch of the correct version. So that's potentially a problem. Now, we're going to later on, I think we're going to have lots of scanning across that says, hey, look, you've got, anytime you detect that that's happening, let's have a list of potential issues that my model manager might look at. So that's just a consequence of having lots of these different projects in one model, all playing nicely, branching, planning, and looking at the thing now from a different point of view, not from the point of view of the individual projects, but from the point of view of a single element. So that's kind of cool. We can also step up a level. and look at it from the point of view of an individual project. So here's the little thing of a project. We can say, okay, for that project, everything that you're doing in that project, let's see what its impact is on other projects. Because you remember what we were doing here with projects, we were putting their own elements underneath. So here's another project. Their elements live underneath there, and they're also connected to that project element, as you saw in that previous item. So we can tell a lot about a project. So we can draw real time a dependency diagram for a project. Not much to say about this one, other than here's the project handling, interesting, project C1, and it's got a bidirectional dependency on this other project. Not a very interesting diagram, except I could double click on the link that says, well, why? Why are they dependent on each other? And the answer is they've both done a branch of the same element, or the same two elements in this case. Device D2 and device C3, both these projects have branched them. So these two project managers need to talk to each other to say, you're working in this area and so are we. Are our changes compatible or are they independent? Good to explore that some more. So I would say bother saving that. These could be more complicated. Let's try another one. Draw another dependency diagram. Bit of thinking to do. So this one's a little more interesting because it's got a dependency on that project. So my project here, C2, has a dependency on that one. So obviously there's something that C3 is producing that I need. What is it? So there's this node, pretty unlikely, but there you go. There's a change being made to something by C3 project, and I've branched it. So if anything happens to that project, I want to know, because I'm not going to be able to deliver my project. This is something that your project manager is going to be very, very interested in. And I think, I don't know, I may be wrong here, but it's the first time I can remember doing something in EA that my project manager actually cared about, other than producing my deliverables and so on. But a direct link between how I'm doing my modeling and the wider issues of the project. And we can step up a further layer and say, well, what about the complete portfolio of projects? So we can take a portfolio of projects and say, well, let's do a portfolio dependency diagram. Bit more thinking to do here because there's a lot more projects and each of those projects has lots of elements and they've got lots of connectors, and so there's an awful lot going on here. But we can still draw the big diagram of a portfolio. So you can imagine the manager of a whole bunch of projects getting this every day, every week, every hour to say, what are all the dependencies that exist between my projects? Now, these guys look like they're a problem, but the other guys over here, they're fine. They don't depend on each other, which makes for an easy life for or easier life for your project manager. So that's the project view. So we've had the view from an individual project, how do I affect other people? We've had the view from my entire project, how does it depend at a bigger level on other projects? And how my portfolio relates to all the other portfolios and all the other projects. There's another bunch of stakeholders in this, though. They're the people who are looking after the baseline. So my enterprise architects, my process leads who are looking after all the processes. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can help them with to say, there's a load of stuff going on here. Where should I spend my time? And that's what I often struggled with doing that job was, I know there's all kinds of things going on, but what's important? So we'll look at some of the views that we've created here for owners of individual bits of the model. So I'm going to look at, I've got lots and lots of stuff here. Let's look at the business processes. And actually, so I'm not going to go and look at it by process, by portfolio. I'm going to look at it for the whole project. Sorry, for the whole model. So here's all the things I've got in my model. Somewhere here, there's a business, here we go, business processes. Right, go find them all. So that was quite quick. Again, pretty simple query to look at these guys and all. Let's try to get it a bit bigger for you. All right, I won't. So a kind of realistic number of business processes that would exist in a big model like this. There's about 300 or 400 in here, so you've probably got more. Where should I spend my time? Well, what's happening? Well, the grey ones, nothing's happening. So that's easy. These guys are being changed, so they have one or more branches. So it's my little green color. These are where there's a planned change going to happen. All right. These guys are planned to be retired, and the red ones are being retired. And the size of the box is a complexity measure. I'm kind of still thinking about what that complexity measure should be. I've chosen it at the moment is just how many connectors has it got to other things, which I think is a fair measure of complexity. You know, how often is it used by other parts of the model? So you can probably see this one over here. I'm planning to retire that, and it's connected to all sorts of stuff. So I should probably go and think about that some more and spend some time looking at that. All these, by the way, have drill downs, which I won't go into today. So quite a lot of work goes into producing all these different project links, but at the end of it, I can get these big pictures. And the big picture that, well, I added this in because lots of the other tools that do enterprise architecture do this kind of stuff. And it's just illustrating really a consequence of having all this information and getting a big picture, because people like big pictures. It gives them a sense of, I can get my arms around what's going on. So because we've got all these branches and changes and new things and things being retired, and we've put dates on all of them as we've been going through, I didn't touch on the dates very much other than to say there are some floating about. Each project has a date, and each planned element can get given a date when it happens, so when it's born or when it's deleted. And we can get a big picture like this and say, what's the effect of all these dates? What's going to happen to this world? And I don't know, is this really useful? I'm not sure. It certainly helps to explain to people who are thinking about doing it this way, this is the kind of big picture you can get. So we can pick this and say, give me a time machine. Now, I wish EA would be able to let me dock these things nicely, but it just doesn't. So here's my portfolio manager time machine, and here's my huge diagram. Let's do it in Panavision and Technicolor. So all of these are elements within my model. They've all either been changed, they're about to be deleted, something's going to happen to them. Let's see what happens over time. Because this is, if you like, the pointy end of the pyramid in terms of the value add of what we're doing here. So we can say, this is my diagram as I drew it before. Oh, Q2 20, oh, that was interesting. Things change starting the first quarter. Oh, I need to update this first quarter 22. And then no change there. Oh, more stuff appears. More stuff appears. Some stuff deletes. And go back. Oh, what happened there? Oh, yeah, those guys came and went. So if you do have people that keep going on about this as is and to be, and you say, no, there isn't an as is and to be, there's an as is and an infinite number of to be's depending on how many projects you've got, this shows them how this architecture is evolving. Don't get me wrong, it took me ages to lay this diagram out such that when things appear and disappear, it doesn't make it look terrible. So it's not a free lunch. But the information behind it, that is free, because that's coming from me managing all of these projects nicely. So hopefully you get an idea that if you manage things in this way, all of your individual change projects, what can come out of it is some really valuable information. How do projects depend on each other? How do portfolios manage all the projects inside of themselves? What's my baseline look like across all of my hundreds and thousands of processes, or my dozens and dozens of use cases or user stories? How is my architecture going to evolve over a period of time? So these are things that I think we haven't really been able to do in Enterprise Architect before, and now it's available. Now you can get it. So this then, I mean, I'm doing pretty well on time actually. So there will be some time for me to handle questions afterwards. So this is my summary kind of thing of what Portfolio Manager is delivering into this solution architecture world. So for the project team, they can see what their impact is of my changes on everybody else and their impact on me as well. And I'm enabled then to build on what changes they're going to make. So if they say, oh, I'm going to change this component to add a new interface onto it, oh, that's fine. I like to add that new interface. I'll take that new interface that you've added and I'll use it in my project. So projects have a nice, rational, well-organized way of evolving into the future. For my project and program managers, allowing them to understand these dependencies is a real step forward. I don't think we've been able to do that in Enterprise Architect before. And it suddenly means that the work that we're doing in Enterprise Architect becomes of great interest to our project and program managers. And I think this when it's implemented, will encourage them to say, look, you need to do everything in EA now. I don't want to just see little bits and pieces. I want everything. I want all the processes. I want all the technical architecture. I want the solution. I want the full enterprise architecture. I want all of my risk management and my data going in here because I want to understand the impact of all these changes. Of course, because now I can see the change impact. For people who are managing baselines, if you're the data lead, you can look across all the data changes. If you're the process lead, you can look across all the process changes and suddenly see where you need to be spending your time. Where are the hotspots where you need to drill in and go, actually, there are 6 different projects all changing the same area. I need to spend my time there rather than just going to endless meetings. And finally, for your senior managers, okay, the architected time machine is a bit of a gimmick, but it is pretty cool. And it does show those senior managers that really now you have got your arms around everything that's going on, all the projects that use this technology. So the tool that's doing this is a thing called Portfolio Manager. It's available from eaportfoliomanager.com because Portfolio Manager as a name had already gone. So it's produced by us at Ability Engineering. It's available now. We're doing a kind of a launch beta test program until the end of the year. So it's available now, free. We will start charging as of the 1st of January next year. So if you want to download it and have a go, you've got from now until the end of the year to have a go and play with it. We do a regular call every month where I sit down and get together with everybody. Oh, Jackie's wandering around talking to me.
3 questions which
okay.
you need to answer.
Jackie's telling me there's 3 questions. Yeah, so that's the idea of Portfolio Manager. So there are some questions. Sorry, so my lovely assistant.
We don't have a long time to do this, so I'll answer just 3 now and then the rest on Teams.
Okay, so I'm handling some questions now, apparently, according to my lovely assistant. Further down.
Okay, Version Foundation.
Okay, so somebody's asked me what is the version foundation? Is it Git? No, this is absolutely 100% not Git or SVN or anything like this. Everything lives in the EA model. It's just connectors and elements. There is no Git magic here at all. And by the way, that's important for this user group because the people I'm talking to about doing this have no idea what Git is. They have no idea what SVN is. Branch merge means nothing to them at all. They're process modelers. Yeah, they're solution architects. They wouldn't know Git from a hole in the ground. So it's really important that we absolutely don't do anything to do with that world. We use the branch terminology just because it was easier rather than saying copy. Okay. So Jackie thinks there's another question I should take.
Is it language agnostic?
Yeah, is it language agnostic? Yes, it is. It absolutely doesn't care. You can see in this, I did a bit of BPMN, I did a bit of Archimate. It absolutely doesn't care. It's elements and connectors. Doesn't care at all what the language is, but a good question, and I should have mentioned that before.
Does it work with cloud-based?
Yeah, it works with everything to do with EA because it is just, it's an add-in that runs on your local EA machine, so you need to have a proper copy of EA, but it's just elements and connectors. So Collaborate will work, EA Docs will work, Model Expert will work, all your favorite add-ins and favorite bits of cloud PCS and stuff like that, they'll just work because it's just elements and connectors, well organized element connectors, but that's all it is.
And one other one.
Oh, from Takeshi, where do you store the information on the type for the time machine feature? Well, it's just in the elements. So the elements, when I drew my diagram, good question, by the way. So I drew my diagram. with the elements that are in the baseline, and then just said to the time machine, roll it forward, examine all these guys again, how many of them still exist at this date? And it said, that's still there, that's still there. Oh, that's gone. Oh, take it away from the diagram. Now roll it forward again, go and examine all the elements again. Who's still here for this date? Any new stuff has appeared since then? Oh, that's appeared. Right, we'll put that in. So it's purely using the data that all the projects have already created. So it's the architecture time machine is kind of a freebie. You don't have to add extra data to make it work. You have to draw the diagram pretty carefully so it doesn't draw on top of itself. But it works just it's emergent behavior, a bit like the project dependencies.
And the team have asked if we can cut now so they can prepare for the next.
Okay, so I'm being told to cut. I'm going to disappear now and go into the Teams view.
All right.
And
thank you.
And answer some questions there. So thank you very much for your attention. And
thank you.
EAPortfolioManager.com. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian, and thanks everyone for your time. I'm sure the session was informative and gave deeper insights into the topic. As mentioned earlier, Ian will now be available in MS Teams to have detailed discussions and answer more questions. The link to Microsoft Teams is pasted in the chat window for your quick reference. If anyone is having difficulty in connecting to Teams, please reach us at this chat. Please reach us in this chat window or write to us at registrations@eaglobalsummit.com. We will be staying in the session for a few minutes to address any issues. Thanks once again, everyone, and we look forward to hosting you all in another wonderful session in the summit shortly. Thank you.